from the outside, I looked like I had it together. You know, I was achieving the goals. I was doing excellent at university. I was modeling at the time and trying to break into my acting career. And yeah, it was, but inside I was just rotting away.
You are listening to the Under the Rug podcast with Nalini Tranquim.
Welcome to season 2 of Under the Rug. I'm your host, Nalini Tranquim. I am so excited for today because I have my very dear friend, Danielle McAlpine Johnson, joining me today. This woman, oh my gosh, where do I even start? She is an absolute powerhouse. And if you haven't heard our earlier episode where we talked on the topic of rest versus idleness, you have got to hear it. So we're going to make sure that we have those notes in the description field of today's episode. Okay, so be sure to catch up on that. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming award-winning writer, director, producer, wife, mother, and of course my precious friend, Danielle McAlpine Johnson.
Hello, beautiful woman. How are you?
I am so good. How are you?
That was a pretty awesome rap you just gave me. I hope I live up to it.
Oh, I love you so much. Gosh, it has been such an amazing journey getting to know you and us doing life together. Can I just say that? Am I allowed to say that?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I feel exactly the same way. I think every time I'm around you, I get those tingles and I know something awesome is going to happen.
I know.
It's a very precious relationship, that's for sure.
No, it really is.
Godsend.
Yeah, and I think one of these days we'll definitely have to delve into the topic of friendships and the need for good, healthy friendships, because I think that's actually something a lot of people struggle with.
Yes.
You know?
Oh, yes. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That's a topic we need to touch on for sure.
Yeah, for sure, because I think sometimes we get so caught up in being loyal, even if it's to our detriment. Anyway, that's a whole other topic. Thank you so much for being with me today. So you and I have had several conversations on the topic of our belief system. And we were chatting about it the other day, and we decided we were actually going to do this together as an episode. And I'm so pleased that we are. And while we were having the talk, you actually alluded to the fact that this conversation on belief system and what we believe and then how it then flows into habits reminded you of a situation when you were a child, and you described it as a lie that you had believed as a child that then flowed into your adult life. So I would love to just hand the floor over to you and for you to share a little bit about that with us.
Yeah, sure. It was quite ironic actually, because as we were talking, it was just like this flashback to the beginning of I guess that journey you've just described. And I remember standing in a gym. It was quite late at night. My dad, he was a school teacher, but at night he would work at a gym as a gym instructor, and he was shutting up the gym. And my brother and sister, no, my sister wasn't born yet. My brother and I were standing there with a couple of other little kids whose parents worked there as well. And this lady was like, it was all, even though she wasn't, I don't think she was a Christian or anything, but it was like she was prophesying over us of like what we would be when we became older. And she went through everyone, and then she got to me and she goes like, oh, and you're so pretty, and you're going to be like that girl on the Price is Right. You know how she used to stand up there and she used to do the hands, right. And she just stood there, and that was all she did on the show was wow. display the products that they would win. And she was like, you'll be like one of those girls on those shows, and you'll marry a footballer. And so I was just like, oh, okay, cool. And, you know, coming from a small town where footballers are like absolute kings, and they often marry, you know, the pretty model or what have you.
Wow.
I started to believe that. And then as we were talking, you know, a couple of weeks ago, that then led to another time. I was in kindergarten, and the kindergarten teacher continued to take me out for about half an hour every session. She would take me away from the rest of the kids, and she would do all this testing on me. And from a very young age, so that was the first vision I had, I would have been about 10, but this I would have been about 5. And I believed that she was taking me out because I needed extra work. And so from then I started to believe these lies that I'm just a pretty girl.
Wow.
I'm not I have nothing more to offer than my looks. And then and the kindergarten thing, that I needed additional attention intellectually. Now,
Yeah.
fast forward to just before my mum passed. I told her about the kindergarten vision that I had, and she said, "Oh, my darling," she said, "no, the teacher wasn't taking you out because you needed extra attention. She took you out because you thought outside the box and you thought very differently to every other kid in the class." And she was doing
Wow.
a thesis. So this kindergarten teacher was doing a thesis on children who think differently and need different strategies to pull out their creativity. And so for that would have been 30 odd years, I believed that, you know, I had been needing extra attention since I was a child. And it's a silly lie to believe, but somewhere in me, it had rooted. And then marrying that with what the lady said at the gym, you know, and it's crazy to think that those lies stuck for so long, because I had parents that told me all the time how clever I was and how creative I was. But then fast forward to high school, and there's all these stereotypes of what people are. And I was the sporty girl. I was the captain, you know, or vice captain of every sports team. And yeah, I was the pretty girl as well, you know,
Yeah.
along with many other pretty girls. But I was the sporty girl, I was a pretty girl. I wasn't intelligent and I wasn't creative. And so I ended up topping my class in English in year 12 for the first semester. And I was like, oh my gosh, I am clever. I do have intellect, all these things. But then sat back in that disbelief and that lie that I'd believed for so long, and ended up not doing as well as I probably should have. So there's a little bit of background about believing lies that we tell ourselves, and I guess being careful what we speak over young children.
Yeah. Isn't it so interesting how, despite the fact that your parents always used to say that you were smart and that you were beautiful, it didn't sit in here or in here?
Yes. It's crazy. It's looking back now, I just think, oh my gosh, if I had have been able to speak to my 5, 10, 15-year-old self, even my 19-year-old self, what I could have changed
Yes.
in the path of my life, and some of the situations I may have avoided had I or encountered had I believed that I did have a brain and that I was very creative. So it's something that messed with me for quite a long time.
And how do you think it affected then the decisions that you made throughout the course of your life?
Well, I think, if I may say, it wasn't until I met God that I actually
Yeah.
really woke up to who I was designed to be.
Wow.
And yeah, it up until then, I always did quite well. I was always quite a high achiever.
Yeah.
But as far as really believing in myself and really understanding what I was capable of, I didn't know until quite late. I guess I'm 40 now. I would say 25, 26, I started to go, oh, I've actually got some talents here. And it's weird. It's so weird that I say that, because I used to win a lot of awards, and I'd excel in sport, and even in university. But for some reason, I just did not believe that I was intelligent or creative. It was something that I believed for a very long time, and meeting God and understanding my identity in Him just exploded that lie, and it dissipated.
I find it so amazing that you say that it was really only at the point of meeting God that you, like, your identity came alive, because he was the architect, like the original architect of your life.
Yes,
You
yes,
know, he's the one who held the plans, you know, the design of you. And until you came to know him, that it was like more then began to be revealed concerning who you actually are,
yeah,
where
absolutely.
it's not based on man's opinion
Mm,
or man's interpretation of you, but actually from the architect's mouth directly.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you think about a house plan, you know, a blueprint of a house and how it's meant to be designed, and then somebody comes along and takes those blueprints off the designer and gives it to somebody else, and they say, oh no, this needs to be here and here and here, and then passes on to the next one, and that the whole plan for that house is going to change. And I guess in my journey, that's somewhat what happened in my own mind, is that I started to believe all these things that were not right and not correct and not the way my creator had designed me to be.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so taking you back then to pre-meeting your creator, because I actually want to go into that a little bit, if that's okay, because I'd love to hear how that shift looked for you. But before having your encounter with God, how did this belief and this mindset affect you, like day to day? I mean, you mentioned how you didn't do as well in the exams as you probably could have, right? So how did it impact you? I guess my real question is how did it impact you from a mental health standpoint? Did you always feel like you were under the mark?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, back in the day, it's funny. I graduated the year 2000. I graduated. I was not aware of mental health. It wasn't something that was discussed. I think maybe depression was out there. It's not something that I ever really struggled with or was aware of. But looking back now, I probably never really struggled with that. But I did struggle with quite negative thoughts of just that negative chitter chatter in your head of no matter how well I did, it was never good enough. And I think that's quite a negative mindset to go through life with. I guess the offspring of that is striving, and constantly striving, which I know we've spoken about many times. And so I can pinpoint that that's probably where that striving came from of no matter, I could shoot 20 points in a basketball game and it still wasn't good enough. I was just very, very tough on myself. And it's probably only recently, maybe in the last 3 years, have I really broken out of that. Like, no matter how much I achieve, it's not attached to my identity anymore. It's like, it's being able to separate my identity and myself from what I can achieve. And if I don't achieve anything in a day, that does not define who I am and my worth. And that's something that, I would say in probably the last 3 or 4 years, I've really navigated well in separating those two.
Okay. How did you get to that place where you realized that this early day belief had framed your internal narrative over these years and in turn affected your habits and the way you were responding to things? How did you get to that place where you knew that it was a negative mindset and to continue down that path would be to your detriment going forward, and that something had to change?
I think it always comes back to identity for me, and I think maturity as well, in knowing my creator and the relationship that I have with him, and understanding that, my value, if you think of actually, I used this in our last documentary. If you think of a coin, a gold coin, a $1 coin, it's worth $1. If you put that in a fire and it gets a bit singed and, it burns a little, or, it gets a little bit rough around the edges, it's still a $1 coin. Its worth is still $1. And so for me, I guess understanding that my worth is not caught up in what I do, but in who I am and who I was created to be and who loves me. Like we're designed to be loved and to love. Our greatest call is to love our creator and love others. And we're made in his image, which is love. So if that's who I am, if I am love, and I can offer love and I can accept love, then nothing I do can shape that. That's who I am. Whether I get up tomorrow and go and write a documentary, or go and fold the washing, or whatever it is, attend to my beautiful children, or whether I stay in bed all day, my worth does not change. Now, I'm not going to do that because there's things to be done, and we're here for a purpose, and we have to, we're responsible for our life, and the things we do. But if I don't get out of bed for that day, my worth does not change. And that was something that only came when really understanding that I am loved and born to love others.
That's extremely powerful. Can you take me then to your encounter with God? Like, what happened? How did that happen?
I've just said previously that I didn't go through depression in high school. No, I didn't. But after high school, I went through a pretty traumatic experience when I was 19, which led me down a very, very dark path. And I did spiral into pretty severe depression where I no longer wanted really to be here. It was pretty tough. I didn't share too much of that with my parents or my family. Everybody from the outside, I looked like I had it together. I was achieving the goals. I was doing excellent at university. I was modeling at the time and trying to break into my acting career. And yeah, it was, but inside I was just rotting away. And fast forward about 3 years, I was probably in this space for about 3 years. I was living in the Bahamas, and my girlfriend at the time, who was pretty wild, just like I was, alcohol, you name it. We were just everything, party animals. She moved to Australia and came back, and she had an encounter with God. And she came and she was pressing me. And I was like, you've gone crazy. You've gone mad. This is ridiculous. And then one day I just had this supernatural encounter with what I believe was the Holy Spirit, and it just dropped into my body. And from that moment on, my life just changed in the most miraculous way. Like, I never have had experienced depression again. Yes, I've experienced anxiety when my mother passed, and from then on a little bit, a lot for that period. But never depression, not a day. It was like an instant relief. And I certainly didn't, there was a lot of healing to do, but my life just changed. I stopped being so incredibly wild. I stopped drinking, drugs, just everything just dropped away. It just fell off me. And it was just the most miraculous encounter. And then I went on this really beautiful journey with God, where he started to show me all these parts of my life that needed healing. And slowly but surely this restoration took place. And it's led me to here, where I'm probably in the happiest season of my life. I'm 40. I've got 4 beautiful children, a really happy marriage. We're building a house by the beach, and had people known what I'd been through to get to here, they probably wouldn't believe it, but it was all through this healing God that I met, that this is all unfolded.
That is so incredible. I think what I've loved about my own journey with God is that it's a partnership with him. So he reveals these areas in our lives that need work, or those hidden struggles that need to be brought to the surface and addressed. And he does it in such a beautiful way. It's not like you feel shame, by it coming to the surface. It's more revelation, so that you've now got this opportunity to bring about the change that's required. But that's what I love too, is that it's not all on him to fix.
Yes.
Even though he has the power to just miraculously heal us completely from it. And it sounds to me like he did do a level of that in your life when you met him.
Yeah.
But there's also a journey that needs to take place where you have to outwork that healing, and you have to take practical steps to come to that place where you are now free of this issue.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So for you, what did those steps look like, right? So you've grown up with this negative self-belief about yourself. You've come into this understanding of who God is. And as you're growing in him, you're getting to know him better, and him being our spiritual father, I always think of it as, family resemblances. As you're getting to know your heavenly father, he's revealing to you more of you, of who you are, right?
Yes,
As
yes.
his daughter. So
Yeah.
he reveals to you that you've been struggling with this issue of negative self-belief. What were some of the steps that you had to take in order to break yourself free from that?
Yeah. Well, I think, as you said before, he's a gentleman. He's not going to come in guns blazing and fix you. He's going
That's
to knock on
right.
your door,
Yeah.
and then he's going to wait. And that's what he did with me. He was there knocking, and every time I opened that door, it was this extraordinary. Oh, you can't even put words to it.
Oh,
It's just that, like you say, it's relational. He's a relational God, and he's not religious. It's not, if I do all these things, I'm going to gain his love. No,
that's right.
it's spending that time and spending that quality time with him. And some people might say, well, how the heck do you spend quality time with the creator of the world? Well,
Yeah.
you seek him, and you knock on his door and it will open. You seek him and you will find him. You ask and it'll be given. And it's this constant seeking and knocking and asking, and listening and waiting. It's a two-way conversation. It's not just me saying, give me, give me, give me, or please, please,
Yeah.
please. It's I love you. I love you. What do I do here? And he often speaks back. He often
Yes.
speaks back, whether it's through a voice that I hear, or through nature, or through signs. There's so many ways that, or through another human being. I just know when somebody's talking to me, and it's the voice of God talking through them. You do it to me often. But I think, I'm reminded of that notion of, you become like the 5 people you surround yourself with.
Yeah, it's true.
So if we're spending more time with God than we are any other human being, then who are we going to become?
Yeah.
We're going to become caring. We're going to become loving,
Wow.
compassionate. We're going to deal with long suffering well. We're going to be patient.
Yeah.
We're going to, want to give and be just and have mercy for other people and grace for other people, because that's who he is.
Yeah, exactly.
And so the more time I started to spend with him, the more of, I guess, his traits started to play out in my life. And I started to be a lot more gentle on myself, gentle on others. And because you can't give something that you don't have.
Exactly.
We can't offer somebody something that we don't have. And so the more grace he gave me, the more grace I was able to show my husband or my children. The more finance he gave me, the more I was able to bless other people financially and sow into other people's lives. The more kindness that he gave me and showed me this like, it passes our human understanding, the kindness that he has for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we're able to reciprocate that and show that to our fellow human beings. And yeah, I guess they're the steps. It's just really spending that time with him, and allowing his nature to become our nature.
Yes, I love that. My gosh. Wow. Okay, I've got so many questions floating around in my head right now. I'm like, where do I go with this? So, okay, I want to share a story with me, because growing up, I didn't struggle with negative self-belief. I fully believed in myself, and I fully believed in the gift that God had given me, which I knew at the time, was music. So I learned that from a very, very young age. And so I've shared with people many a time that my whole childhood was gearing me towards becoming a full-time musician. And I'd always had in my heart that I wanted to be able to travel the world and share the love of Jesus through music and storytelling, right? That's always been my dream.
Yeah.
And then, obviously life happens. So different situations have happened throughout the course of my life that have been what I guess I define as setbacks, that have knocked me off my perch. And then I've had to, struggle and push through to still pursuing what I believe was a God-given dream from a very young age. But I have actually been on a journey of negative self-belief after my time in London, where I was under that very abusive, narcissistic pastor in my church. I was his worship director, and that constant drip feeding of negativity. It's like what you said earlier, you know, look at your top 5 friends, because the people you spend time with are the people you become like. That constant drip feeding of negativity over me eventually led me to a very dark place where I honestly didn't know who I was. I felt like I had completely lost sight of my identity, had completely lost sight of my confidence in my gift and in my talents. And it was years, like honestly, it was such a long road for me before I got to the point where God revealed to me that my identity had been attacked.
Yeah.
Right. And I found myself, it literally was like I was standing at a crossroads and had a decision to make. Do I carry on down this path of negative self-belief where I continue to question who I am and what I'm here for? Or do I draw a line in the sand with that and choose to go on this journey of healing with God and allow Him in to do that healing work, regardless of how treacherous that journey and that process may be? Lots of snot and tears, I'm sure, right? To then, Lord willing, come out the other side with this renewed confidence and this renewed sense of who I am and the gifts revived, I suppose, on the inside of me, to then be able to get back out and do what, you know, God's put me on this earth for. So I found myself at this crossroads a few years ago, thinking to myself, right, I've got to choose now whether I carry on down this path or whether I take this path. And my goodness, like you said, God is so gracious, because I made the decision that no, I need to be free of this. I feel like so much time in my life has been stolen,
Yeah.
you know, as a result of this experience. And I am not willing to allow any more time to be wasted or lost. And so whatever that journey is, God, I am willing and I am ready to go on that road with you. And I think for me, part of those steps to my healing was speaking life over me. So like with you, spending time with God, but also whenever those negative thoughts would come and hit my mind, like, who do you think you are? You know, what on earth do you think you can bring to the table when we have these legends out there already doing what you're thinking you're going to do, right? I would have to consciously replace that narrative in my mind with, no, God's created me for a plan and a purpose, and I am going to live that plan and purpose out.
Absolutely.
You know, but it was years for me of coming to that point of, oh wow, it actually doesn't bother me anymore.
Yeah.
You know, it didn't happen overnight. I
And
think
how, yeah. And what was your journey to that place? What were the steps that you took?
look, partly that, so partly you know, really speaking words of affirmation over me. So I was consciously even doing that in my journaling in the mornings, is what life-giving words can I speak over me today that I wouldn't normally do, that I wouldn't normally speak over me. But the more I began to do this, the more I actually began to believe, you know, it for myself, you know,
Yeah.
on the inside. But it was also about repositioning myself in terms of friend groups.
Yes. Wow. I can relate to that one.
I was going to say, okay, I want to hear from you. But I had to, and I do this sometimes with my clients, is we evaluate our friends and we do like a friend audit. I'm from an accounting background, so you have to excuse me. But I will literally go, okay, Lord, who are the people that speak into my life and influence me? And are they good for me? Or are they not good for me? And if they're not good for me, why are they still in my life speaking over me? And here I am allowing that. It's not good. And so something has to change. Something has to shift.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know it resonated with you. So share with us your experiences then on that front.
I think probably the greatest, I'm sure anybody that has heard me speak on any forum has probably heard me speak about this very topic because it's something that I guess a lived experience that I've had. But TD Jakes, he nailed it in a sermon that I watched once, and he spoke about comrades, constituents, and confidants. And so we're very, very lucky to ever have one confidant in our life, somebody that stands by us through thick and thin.
Right.
That no matter what, they are there. You know, often it's a pastor or a father or a mother or a brother or a sister or a husband or a very, very close best friend.
Right.
So we're lucky if we have one or two of those in a lifetime, a confidant. Then you've got the comrades, and they're like scaffolding. They're the ones that come into your life for a period of time, and they help you build because they believe in your mission, they believe in you, and they want to see you succeed.
Wow.
So I've got some incredible comrades in my life, and a few confidants as well. So I feel very blessed. But then the third ones we have to look out for are the constituents, and they're the ones that very much look like a comrade. But the constituents are those that they're not for you, they're for what you can offer, and they're for what you're for.
Wow.
So for instance, in production, I can offer somebody a really great opportunity. Being a producer and writer and director, often people come to you and they want what you have. They want what you can offer them. And so we have to be really careful of these particular people. It doesn't mean we can't work with them. It doesn't mean we can't love them.
Yeah.
But it just means that you have to have particular boundaries in place to protect yourself.
Absolutely.
Because often we do misconstrue them as a comrade, and we think, oh, they're so for me and they're so for what I'm doing and they're backing me all the way. But as soon as they get what they need from you, they will drop you like a sack of potatoes, and it can be very, very hurtful.
Yeah.
Incredibly hurtful. And I've had that time and time again in my life, but in the last 3 or 4 years I've really understood, and it was only through those lived experiences that I could understand it to the depth that I have, and be able to hopefully teach my daughter to never go through that again, to really understand the difference.
Yes.
To continue loving these people, and yes, working with them, and yes, you know, if they're in your life for a reason, allow them to be there, but also be very, very aware of who they are and what they want and what you can offer and what you're willing to offer.
Yes.
And sometimes you do have to cut people out of your life for your own good and for the sake of your family and your mission in life. So
absolutely. Yeah. And don't feel like that's a bad thing. I said at the get-go that I think sometimes people get so caught up in loyalties.
Yes.
And being seen to be loyal with people, regardless of whether those people are healthy or not. You know?
Yeah.
And it's not about that. It's about choosing where your loyalties lie.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, going back to the topic of this podcast and identity, we're not going to get along with every human being. We're not shaped. We're all authentic and unique and purpose for different things, and we're all a little piece of a really big puzzle.
Yes.
And I think the older you get and the more mature you get, the more you realize and find and seek and are able to, I guess, differentiate your people very quickly. And life's so short. Like, we don't have a lot of time here. So surround yourself with really good people that are going to, you know, we've already got these negative voices in our head. We don't need external voices as well.
Yes,
so surround ourselves with those people that are going to speak life and beauty into us, and all things, you know, all things good.
I love that.
Because if anybody out there that's listening is anything like me and struggled with the things I've struggled with, you don't need more negative voices. You need people that are going to lift you up.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. As a mum, because you are a very beautiful mum, what advice do you have? I know there's going to be a lot of mums listening to this podcast, and this is going to be so appropriate for them personally. But what advice can you bring to parents who are listening into this to ensure that they are distilling these, this very important message in their in their youth, in their children, into when it comes to identity, because I think that this is an area that honestly our young ones are struggling with at such a completely different level to what we had to navigate in our teenage years. So how can parents come alongside their children now, and what can they say, and how can they present this to their children to at least, help lead them on the right path?
Yeah, I mean, we remind our kids every single day that they're unique, that they were created for a purpose. And, the motto of our company is where passion meets pain, we find purpose. And so we're constantly trying to hone in on their passions and really find what it is that they want to do, not what we want them to do.
Love that.
And drawing out their gifts and their the beauty within them so they can offer that. Because when a child is empowered, they succeed. And so often I think we as parents can push kids down a path that we want them to go down.
Yeah.
But if we focus on pulling out the gold that God's already put in them and harnessing that and helping them to pursue that purpose from a very young age, and not putting pressure on them to do so, but helping them know that helping them to understand that they have a purpose, that they have gifts, and that their gift is going to be very different to Joe Blow down the street.
That's right.
And not to compare. And we spoke about this prior to this podcast, that we shouldn't be comparing ourselves to others. We'll teach our kids, don't look at, Sally or Joe or whoever it is next to them. Run your own race. And my kids love athletics. They're always running their own lane. And we use that analogy. We speak in their terms, run your race. Don't look at the person next to you. Run your race, because you're extraordinary, and constantly finding that balance of discipline and not blowing their head up too much.
Yes.
Keeping them humble, focusing on humility. What is humility? What does humility look like? But also, you are great and you are genius. And I love your, all of those affirmations. I love what you've done there. Share it with me. If we don't understand what they've drawn, can you tell me about your picture? Rather than what is that? Just the language we use can be very, very shaping, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. I think that's so beautiful, the way that you worded it about drawing out the gold, the God-given gold within our kids. I think that's so important. And especially in this day where, I think a lot of parents maybe have fallen into the trap of, online babysitter, right? Where kids come home from school, they've done their homework, and then they're just online, or they're busy doing their own thing. And there's that detachment and that reduced amount of quality time spent between parent and child. And I just think it's so important that we bring that back in our lives with our kids. Open communication, so that we can really check in and see where they're doing, how they're doing, and inject some gold into their lives as well. I think it really does go a long way. It really does.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much for coming on and just sharing with us your own journey in terms of, because you're an incredible woman and you've achieved so much. And I think it's just going to come as such an inspiration to our listeners who are, going through life themselves and maybe find themselves battling with negative self-belief, to hear that you've also had, gone through this yourself. Honestly, it does take the pressure off. It kind of makes you feel like, oh, okay, phew, I am human. This is normal. And it's not something that we have to tolerate. It's not something that we have to live with. Yeah. We can be free of it. And I love that. I think it really does bring so much hope. So I was sharing with you that this actually ties in so perfectly with this 21-day coaching program that I've developed specifically for women who are battling with negative self-belief.
Yes.
So I'm so glad we've had this conversation. And guys, I'm going to make sure that I include links to the coaching program on today's episode because it's literally a 21-day program that helps you shift from negative to positive from negative to positive self-belief. And the reason why I'm so passionate about this, Danielle, is because it's my own journey. It's
Yeah.
literally what I had to do to be able to break free from something that had honestly stolen from me for years. And, you know, if I can just put this tool in these girls' hands and see them save time, I think that's probably the biggest thing, where they don't have to navigate this for years and years and years themselves. Then gosh, I just really want to encourage you girls to jump on and check it out. Okay, so we'll make sure we've got a link to that. Danielle, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh,
it's always a pleasure.
You just dropped these golden nuggets, and I think I'm going to go away and replay this and just eat your words. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Everyone who joined in today, thank you so much for joining us. Love you so much. Would love to hear from you as well. So drop a comment in the field below, or flip me an email, info@nalinitranquim.com, and we will also make sure that all of Danielle's social media contact, details are on the episode as well, for you to be able to connect with her.
Thank you for listening to the Under the Rug podcast with Nalini Tranquim.